That MTHFR that they were just talking about, it basically means your body cannot break down folic acid, vitamin B9, and some people have an issue with vitamin B12. So if she's giving herself shots of vitamin B12, just standard vitamin B12, and she has the MTHFR, she might not be able to convert that to methylcobalamin where the body can use it. So with people with this problem, and this is what's so crazy, a lot of the times they'll be showing that they have way too large of red blood cells. That's one of the signs that you are suffering from B vitamin deficiency, B9 and B12. And a doctor just prescribes normal B vitamins. Well, you're kind of getting toxic and absolutely depleted at the same time because you have these forms of those B vitamins that your body cannot use. So your body's trying to excrete all of them out because it's like, what do you want me to do here?
You're just like
and at the
flooding
same
the
time,
system.
At the same time, you're completely deficient in those B vitamins because you need a methylated form because that part of your genetic SNP will not allow you to take normal B vitamins and turn them into methyl B vitamins so the body can use them.
This episode is sponsored by Southern Utah Safe and Vault. It's one-stop shop, buy, education, delivery, everything you need with the safe or a vault door. Website is safesfirst.com. Their showroom is 1397 West, Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Phone number is 435-767-7878. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick Legg podcast. We're back in the vault again today. We've got a local entrepreneur and someone who's already kind of blown my mind just by sitting here chatting before we went live. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to kind of sift through. This might be one where, you're kind of sitting at home on the couch, maybe even taking notes, not driving or working. So definitely save this one and re-listen to it. There's going to be a lot of knowledge on this. And what's cool is he's local and owns a local business, so you can go in and try and extract some of this knowledge from him. So this is going to be awesome. So today we have Ryan Brinkerhoff. What's going on, man?
Just here to talk about everything, whatever's on your mind. If I can do it, let's do it.
Like I said, selfishly, I think I'm going to have a lot of questions about myself, but okay. I think, and why I started the podcast really, because we started this, right after COVID.
Okay.
And it was like a lot of people having the same issues, I felt, right? Mm-hmm. But like everyone thought they were on an island. Right. And so that was kind of part of the reason of starting this is like, hey guys, we're all kind of struggling with the same thing. And it might be tweaked to our own life, but in a big picture, 1,000-foot view, it's the same thing.
Right.
And so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and I'll open up a little bit about things I'm going through.
Okay.
And hopefully that'll link to some of the people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. So maybe I'll have you talk just a little background on yourself, a couple of the businesses you have, and we'll kind of just dive into it. But we'll just go from there. So I'll let you introduce yourself and then what businesses you have and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Ryan Brinkerhoff. My main business is InsideOut Hyperbaric Wellness here in St. George, where we do a lot of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We do have a full spectrum infrared sauna there because that's very synergistic with hyperbarics. But yeah, hyperbarics made a big impact in my life when I wasn't doing well. And, we thought it should be something that should be more affordable to people that want to do it. Around the nation, it's $100 to $150 a session. And when I was really sick, that was kind of the thing. And I didn't have that type of money to drop, on hyperbarics. So once I got better, started looking at a business model and thought what we could provide a higher level of service for a lot less money. And that's what's allowed us to become one of the busiest hyperbaric facilities in the country right now. So
where are you located?
We're in the Coral Desert Health Center. So over at the base of Fort Master, right across the street from the big hospital.
Got you.
First office on the right when you come in. So
okay. Why would someone do hyperbaric? I mean, it's like I see the athletes doing it. I see, world-class athletes, Olympians, things like that. But why would just the everyday person do that?
Well, the athletes use it for the same reason that most people use it. It's one of the best anti-inflammatories in the world. So every disease process is hallmarked by higher levels of inflammation. And hyperbarics doesn't work the same way that, most of our pain pills and things like that work, where they're just kind of tricking the body that the pain isn't that bad. It actually goes ahead of that and turns off the faucet of what we call pro-inflammatory cytokines. So there's these little molecules that tell the body to produce inflammation. And in this day and age, for whatever reason, the bodies are overproducing inflammation, because inflammation is necessary to heal somebody. But when it becomes too much, then you start getting these autoimmune disorders, things not healing and whatnot. So Hyperbarics basically says, hey, body, we know we have a problem, but we don't need this much inflammation. Let's dial those cytokines down from a 10 to a 2.
Okay.
And so once that happens, then it allows the body to start healing at a rapid rate. And of course, we get a lot of stem cells circulating when you're in a hyperbaric environment. A lot of epigenetic switches turn on and off. And that's why the saying now is, if a human body can heal, it will probably heal inside of a hyperbaric chamber. So
what does that entail? You're just going in and sitting in this capsule?
Yeah. I mean, some of them look like space pods, right? And people joke around, am I going to blast off to the moon or anything like that?
You're like, oh, that's a new one.
Yeah. Never heard that one. Pretty original, but yeah. You sit in there. We have some you sit upright, some that you lay down in. And we start people out at 60 minutes, and you can be on your phone, read a book, take a nap, and you're just flooding the body with these superficial amounts of oxygen. And that's oxygen is what sets all these different things off. So
how many do you have? How many?
We have 7 of them in our office right now.
Okay.
So,
and they're cranking most of the day, every day?
Yeah, they're pretty full from the time we open to when we close.
So if someone wants to come in, is that a week out? Is it a day out? Is it a month out?
Usually, right now we're about 2 days out on scheduling, and then we also do sell a ton of these. We have chambers all over the country, and we rent a ton of them as well. So if somebody just needs hyperbarics for healing from a surgery per se, right?
Okay.
They're not healing like they should. We send them one. They have it in their house. They do it for 30 days. Wound heals up. They send it back to us, and then we prep, clean it, get it ready to go to this next home.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't these things big?
Oh, no.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No, they're not.
It's like a full body thing.
No, well, yeah, it is a full body thing, but they fold down to the size of like a small tent.
I got you.
So the ones at the hospital, they're made out of metal. And
See, I'm sitting here picturing like some kind of like
submarine looking thing.
Yeah, like CAT scan looking thing.
That's high pressure hyperbaric. So they don't move. As a matter of fact, when they put the one in the new hospital down here, they literally built the frame of the building, and then they set the hyperbaric chamber in with a crane, and then they built the building around it, because it will hold, I think, 8 to 12 people at one time in it. Big old metal looking, so different type of hyperbaric chamber. But
that's wild.
Yeah, ours are portable and FDA approved to have in people's homes. So
what something like that cost just to buy one?
Our least expensive unit's around $9,000.
Okay.
And then they go up to about $25,000 for the really big ones that multiple people can get in. So
just come in and use yours every now and then. Don't spend $10,000.
Yeah. If you don't have something that chronic, just come in and do some sessions, and you'd be amazed at how the body responds.
Huh. See, like we had talked about before we jumped on, like I'm very hard on my body.
Mm-hmm. You're a guy.
Not a ton of water.
So that's what we do.
I'm a lot more Mountain Dew and an energy drink. I run late from one thing to another all day. Mm-hmm. And so when I do eat during the day, it's usually fast food.
Yep.
And then when I get home, I'm not blaming this on him, but I know it's like a subconscious habit that I picked up from my dad. But like when I get home, it's bag of chips, it's bag of pretzels, it's whatever, something that I can just go grab in the pantry. Goldfish,
quick calories, usually carbs,
string cheese.
Yep.
I'm a sucker for string cheese and Mountain Dew.
There you go.
So, but anyway, so like I look at my body like that, and I'm definitely slowing down. Mm-hmm. Mentally, I'm slowing down. I can feel it physically. I mean, I'm 34. It's more often I'm doing a 12-hour day.
Right.
If I'm under 12 hours, that's pretty rare. Mm-hmm. Sunday's the one day that I'm usually still working, but I just take it slower. I'm not like running from one thing to another. And so like something like that, someone like me, and I have, in my, generations behind me, there's arthritis, there's MS, there's fibromyalgia. There's, all that stuff can be helped by going here.
Yeah, we get the different array of folks that we have coming in. So everything from super elite athletes that are not only using it for the recovery aspect, but it's like blood doping a little bit, because your plasma gets 700 to 800 times the amount of oxygen that it normally doesn't have. So if you go into a sporting event, when you get muscle burnout, what's happening is the oxygen is being forced out of your muscles, and then lactic acid comes in and replaces it. But if you have this giant store of oxygen there, you can go push yourself a lot harder and a lot longer. Michael Phelps was living in hyperbaric chambers through his run. And everybody's like, oh, God, he can just swim forever and never get tired. What's he doing? I'm like, a little hyperbaric magic there for you, buddy. He worked his butt off. He ate. But when you get that elite level athlete, everybody's so close. Sometimes it's something like that one's doing and the rest aren't, that lets them be champions. So
yeah. Anything else on that? I kind of want to jump into your other stuff.
No. Hyperbarics, if you have any chronic conditions, and even if you've been told that there's nothing you can do for it, just get on Google and type in whatever your illness is, and then the HBOT, that's the shortened version of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And more likely than not, there will be studies showing that hyperbarics can help.
Well, like you'd mentioned autoimmune. It seems like that's what's thrown around a ton nowadays.
Yes. Yeah, one of my most favorite things in the world, because I think it allows people to be really lazy in the healthcare world. Well, we know there's a problem and we can see there's inflammation, but we can't find any microbes with our shitty testing that we offer. So it must be your immune system attacking your healthy tissue. And it's like, why for 12,000 years have we had this most unbelievable gift that was given to us called our immune system? It's so more advanced than any other animal on the planet. Now, why in the last 100 years is it just going haywire and attacking, our tissue? And I struggle with it.
Why do you think it is?
So I think this goes all the way back to the day when chemicals were made. So what they do now in medicine is they call them forever chemicals, because throughout history, Homo sapiens were able to evolve with their environment, right? But when you took these different molecules, metals, different things, and combine them together to create chemicals, that's like a 10,000-year jump in the future. And our bodies still haven't been able to get the capacity that once we are carrying these chemicals to remove them naturally. And so I think that's what's not only kicked off the autoimmune thing, but I think that's why people are so sick these days and why cancer's out of control. Because before, chemicals were there, mom was just passing down microbiome, some infection stuff, whatever. But now kids are being born with 7, 8, 9 forever chemicals already in their system. And a lot of them are carcinogens. And so they affect everything inside of our body. They mess with our hormones. They mess with our methylation, our detox. And there's so many of them now that affect us in so many different ways that it's kind of become a conundrum for medicine. And I think this is why the autoimmune thing starts to happen as well, because the body knows there's poison inside of it and that it needs to get it out. But if you just follow conventional medicine routes, they say, hey, they're forever chemicals. There's nothing you can do about it. But through functional medicine and through some of the world-renowned naturopaths that I work with, there are ways to bind to these things, get them out of the body, and then let the body finally start functioning like it should. So
it's like like you said, so basically we took evolution 50 years faster than it should have, and our bodies haven't caught up.
Yeah, probably thousands of years faster. Because if for the world we live in to be able to make chemicals happen naturally, it would take so much time and pressure to make that happen. So again, that is a thing that most people don't pay attention to, but it needs to start becoming more mainstream. Because like me, for instance, we had a naturopath roll into town, a world-renowned one, and he sends blood work off to Germany. And they do what they call an IgL test, and it looks for these chemicals inside your cells and a bunch of other things. And I'd just gotten healthy. I'd worked around fuel for 20 years, before I got sick, I was what they called a fuel technician, worked on gas station stuff all the time. And came back from Germany that I had 6 chemicals in me and 5 of them were carcinogens. So my chance of not getting cancer was probably 0%. And so through these IVs that this doctor designed for me and everything like that, which would bind to those chemicals and drag them out, I did something like 20 or 30 of these IVs, sent the blood work off to Germany, came back. Guess what? No more forever chemicals in me. But my kids, they have more chemicals in me than I did. And I was working around fuel for 20 years because they got the worst part of me and whatever chemicals their mother had. And that's why every generation, in my opinion, of Americans is getting sicker and sicker and sicker, because these kids are being born with so many forever chemicals and heavy metals and different things inside of them. The body, it's impossible for the body to do what it needs to do.
Is this a U.S. problem, or do you think this is a global problem?
Well, it's mainly a U.S. problem because the rules and regulations for allowing some of these chemicals is a lot less than it would be anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
For instance, like you look at electromagnetic fields, right? Like they tell you here, oh, your cell phone doesn't bother you, your router in your house, high-powered wires, they don't bother you. Well, the United States, on average, we have 4 times more allowed EMFs in our building codes than in other parts of the world. Like in Europe and Australia, South Africa, they know what these waves do to our bodies. And so when they build homes, it is so much stricter to not allow electromagnetic fields into this home, into those homes. But here, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Da, 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 da. We just have this stew of things that we're exposed to here on such high levels that has now pushed us to like the 32nd healthiest nation in the world. Like we're right next to Grenada and like Chad in Africa. And yet we spend, I don't know how much more money on healthcare, because it's healthcare to just try to fix symptoms of all these things, where in other parts of the world, they're just like, no, we know what causes a lot of these. We're just not going to allow these specific things to, for our people to be exposed to them.
We're just going to cut out the beginning.
Yeah. We're just going to know that, if you use this dye in food, we know that what that does to kids neurologically. So guess what? We're going to make it illegal. And here in the United States, it's like, oh, well, you want to have Skittles red, look really, really red, and you want your Swedish fish to be red and all these different things in your cereals. And then you wonder why kids have ADHD and need to be, put on amphetamines so they can calm down. So
what about Yellow 5? That's a big one in Mountain Dew, it looks like.
Not a good one. It's not a good one. Again, it's a chemical bond of some sort. So our body doesn't have any really good way of removing that from our system. The body will stuff it away where it can and hope and pray to God it doesn't kick off some horrible disease in your body.
See, the conspiracy guy in me is kind of like, well, this is all on purpose. Like they're okay with all of that being around us because then we're dependent on pharmaceuticals, on healthcare, on whatever.
Right.
Or it even just keeps us unhealthy, so we're dependent.
Yeah.
And we can't be the best we can be.
Well, it was really crazy when I got really sick, because I was all into politics and everything before that. But when I got really sick, dude, I didn't care one bit about what was going on locally, statewide, federally. Because when you're in that place where, you know that something's really off in your body, you don't even have the capacity to pay attention to what they're doing. Whatever they're doing, they're doing. And as people get sicker and, more pushed into these little groups that they like to put us in, I think it's all part of the plan, man. You get people where they're so sick, can't work, they got to rely on the government. They're going to vote for whoever they think is going to give them, the most benefits.
Yeah.
And
fake security.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. So
so let's back up a little bit when you got sick and what kind of took you down the path of your other business. You kind of briefly touched on it, but I want you to kind of go down that road again.
Yeah. So when I was, my little brother's 21st birthday. So I would have been around 30 years old. Passed out one night, hit my head, got a major concussion. And I was pretty high functioning before that. I was running a branch for this fuel company down here and, working 15, 16 hours a day like we do because we're not very smart as men. It's just what we do. And, it just set off this whole cascade of chaos in my body. So later on, looking back at it, I think I had some of these stealth infections that I was potentially born with or picked up early on. And my immune system had been really good at keeping them, under control. Like Lyme's disease, that was one of my big things, right? So I had some knee pain, failure to thrive when I was younger, ADHD, but nothing like after I got that concussion. Because when you get a concussion, it can turn off your immune system or it can warp your immune system to not work properly for months. And so these bugs that were just in my connective tissue, causing little hiccups here and there, were allowed to get into my central nervous system. And then from there, it was just this downhill spiral of every and anything that, I could think of. It was amazing how, the first thing I had was started having grand mal seizures at night, after the concussion, and then fibromyalgia set in, just pain through my upper body. Like it was unbelievable. And then, chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia kind of overlap. But dude, when it was time for me to sleep, like I had to sleep. I could not fight it. I could take a whole bottle of caffeine pills, and when the body said you need to sleep, and then I would sleep and I'd fall asleep for like 18 straight hours. Like nothing could wake me up. It's like my body was trying to reboot itself. Then later on, I figured out the fibro thing, got that fixed, but then I started having some neurological things. And the neurologist at the time I was seeing was like, well, ran some tests, and he's like, this is MS. So, which MS isn't good, but, there's still some life to live, stuff like that. But as I went along with that, then I started having some weird symptoms that were more like ALS. And ALS was a monster in my family before. Two of my uncles, who were like my big brothers, died of it. And what was really interesting through that whole process is, for some reason, I felt like I needed to be the one that was taking them all over the country and down into Mexico and stuff like that to see these alternative doctors. And I thought at the time it's just because I loved them, because the rest of the family was willing to drive them, but I felt so compelled. And then later on, looking back and connecting those dots, I think why that happened is I needed to hear and learn some of these things from these amazing alternative doctors. Because when I got really, really sick, it was one of the things that helped save my life. So it's one of those deals where you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling so compelled to do this, but sometimes you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can always connect them looking backwards. And that's really when my education in health and wellness started, when my uncles got so sick. So
yeah, it was like you obviously were supposed to be there for now.
Yeah.
For what you're doing now.
I was like, I felt so compelled, and I didn't understand it at the time. I mean, I loved them. They were like my big brothers and loved their families and everything like that, but so did a lot of other people. But it was like, no, you need to be the one taking them and protecting them along the road, whatever. But it was really important, the education I got along there, because when I started having similar type symptoms, those were the things that made me keep looking and keep fighting and not just go, okay, well, where's my ventilator? Give me my pain pills, and just wither away to nothing and die a horrible death. So
right. And so you kind of took that to the only outlet I think you felt like you had. You started just finding out where you can get equipment to start breaking down your own stuff, right? So
right.
So you called Dixie College.
Yeah, called up the microbiology department.
Just cold
at Dixie.
call.
Yeah, just cold called in. The guy was kind of taken back by it. Older dude, had been tenured there for a long time. And I said, kind of getting ALS thrown in my face right now, potentially. And I think it's wrong. I think they're missing something. What is the type of microscope that I need right now to be able to, if there are microbes playing a role in this, so I can find them? Because like Lyme's disease is known as the great imitator, right? So whatever part of your body it goes in, it can imitate all these different diseases. And the testing through the hospitals has a false negative rate of almost 80%.
Wow.
So the bug is there, but the testing, the criteria they put on the Western blot to be able to test positive for Lyme's disease, I've worked with probably, over 1,000 Lyme's disease patients at this stage, and I only know 2 of them who tested positive through the CDC guidelines. Now we have these companies that are kind of hole-in-the-wall little testing facilities that have developed better ways of finding it, but they still run into that same problem. So anyways, this guy I talked to, he said, "You're crazy. It's autoimmune. There's no bugs here." And he says, "You know what, though? There's a guy here starting a study on pleomorphic bacteria and fungus, and he's just as batshit crazy as you. Maybe I can give you his number."
You guys might speak the same language.
Yeah, and we obviously did, because I called him up just out of the blue and kind of told him what I needed. And he says, "Hey, come over to the lab right now. I'll have everything you need in the shopping cart. You just bring your credit card, order it. We'll ship it wherever you want." And so I show up there, and this guy's just amazing, really warm, upbeat. He got into it because all of his joints were failing at like 40 years old. And then every time they tried to put a prosthetic in him, his body would reject it. And he had a background in microbiology. So he'd tell the surgeons, "Hey, when you're in there, get me some juice out of what you're doing, put it in a sterilized cup, and I want to take a look at it," because the culturing from the hospital kept saying no growth, no microbes found, da-da-da. But when he'd look at it underneath a microscope, he could see microbes everywhere. And he's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. How could
I
this
can
be
see
negative?
them right here. Yeah. And that's what prompted him to start studying these pleomorphic forms of these microbes that we still don't like to pay attention to in this country.
So
even though
is that just like a look the other way thing? Is that not a great way of taking the test, having the, I'm not super versed in this language.
Yeah. So basically, these bugs have what they call an L form or a cell wall deficient form. And in this form, not only are they completely invisible to the immune system because they do something, they drop their outer surface protein, which is the way the immune system could identify them.
Okay.
So now they're invisible to the immune system, and they also ditch their cell walls. So a lot of the antimicrobial drugs will not affect these bugs. So when bugs want to go from point A to point B in the body, they jump into this L form before they get in the bloodstream, because people will say, "Well, if you got fungus or bacteria in your blood, you should be septic and dying." Well, not if they're in this form, because now they're completely invisible to the immune system. And when you go septic, why you die is because the immune system response is so great that it just stops everything in the body from working. So anyways, before I left that day, as I was walking out the door, he said, "Hey, if you're ever bored, you want to come over here, I can show you a lot of this stuff." So every spare second I had, I was over there at that micro lab, and it was just this unbelievable education. Why everybody was telling him he was crazy, he was a quack. He was building a database of these microbes. About the time that he tragically passed away a few years ago, he had something like 160 unidentified bacteria that he still needed to name, and that medicine has never seen.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Because of the way he was extracting it and looking through it.
Because he could see that they were in his own fluids. They were in this L form. And when they're in that form, you put them in a standard culture medium, they will not grow. They will not grow. So he was inventing a culture medium where you could take these microbes in this L form or cell wall deficient form, put them in this medium, and it would allow them to grow back into their standard form. And then once they're in their standard form, then you can throw them in a PCR machine that looks for DNA, and you can find out what its name is. Oh. But when they're in L form, you try to throw them in a PCR machine because they've changed their DNA to go in this other form, completely blind to any PCR tests that we have today.
Wild.
Yeah. It's really wild
stuff.
Wild. Yeah. And it's crazy because we knew clear back in the tuberculosis days, that's one of the things that makes tuberculosis so deadly, is it's a cell wall deficient microbe. And it can switch, back and forth like it does. So when they try to culture it originally or do what they did, it doesn't even stain. You can put all the different types of stains that we know that will highlight standard form bacteria and fungus. When they're in L form, because they don't have a cell wall anymore, they don't stain.
So this isn't a new thought.
No, clear back in the beginning of the 1900s.
But
they always had the idea that only tuberculosis did this. And, man, I can show you
not the case.
Hundreds of hours of videos of,
So now this has kind of spurred you into another business around all of this.
Yeah, it was, after I figured out that I was infected with some, pretty nasty bugs that kept coming up negative through the hospital tests. First, I had to find out how to get myself better, and that was a long process, 6 or 7 years. Once I figured out how to get myself better and I became healthier than I've ever been in my whole entire life, the prompting that I needed to leave the fuel industry and somehow use what I'd learned to help others it was completely overbearing. I could not get the thought out of my head. It ate me alive. Because in the fuel industry, I had tenure. I was making 6 figures, running companies and stuff like that, and had made myself worth a lot of money in that industry. But that constant thought, feeling coming from here, not my brain, but inside of here.
Yeah.
And then, I couldn't not listen to it anymore. So in 2016, quit the fuel industry and opened my little hyperbaric place up with 2 hyperbaric chambers and a $30,000 a year salary, and made a run at it.
Yeah.
And supposedly, I guess just from the numbers, if you don't have a degree in the health and wellness world, the failure rate of companies is extremely high,
sure.
like 98%. And we had some rough years, but now we have one of the busiest hyperbaric facilities in the country, and things are going well. So,
all right. So, all that's amazing. It's a crazy story.
Yeah.
Like when you started talking about all that, I was like, man, it's like when you said, what's the chances?
Oh, dude.
And I'm like, well, it sounds like it's 1-to-1 for you.
No, well, yeah, it was unbelievable.
It turned out to be that way.
Yeah, it was really, and then it became a very humbling and somber place to be in, because it was like, okay, did this magic just happen for me to go back and fix encryption devices at gas stations? And it's like, no, you have to take what you've learned, put your big boy pants on, and be a little bit brave and courageous, and see where you can get a niche to provide some of this information to others. And
yeah, you kind of got led down this road, and it's like, okay, now it's time for you to take the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love it. So let's talk about your Arizona business a little bit. So, and I think it's interesting of why it's in Arizona. We can kind of talk about that a little bit too. But
yeah, so I do something called live cell analysis. That's where we take a drop of human fluid, most of the time it's blood, but sometimes if there's stuff going on in the mouth, it can be saliva, it can be urine, whatever. And we throw it under a high-powered microscope, and we watch it while it's alive. And you see how everything in this really amazing environment is interacting with itself. And when you take that and you combine it with not only some of the standard blood work, but provide this live cell analysis to functional medicine doctors or naturopaths, which are the doctors that I prefer, it's unbelievable the things that they can decipher from that, and they can get people out of wheelchairs, and they can do amazing things. And it's allowed all around the world. It's just here in the United States. There's only a few states now that even allow it. And so a few years ago, Utah decided they didn't want to allow it anymore. And, there was a bunch of people, relying on me for this. And so it's like, okay, Arizona's just a hop, skip, and a jump over there, and it's still legal there. So that's what we do.
So how many people, is it nationwide? Is it worldwide? How many people, how many people on average a month are you?
So right now I have about 17 doctors that will send patients to me, and some from East Coast, West Coast, and then some locally and whatnot. And then if people just want to do it on their own, I will provide the video footage of stuff like that, and then hook them up with one of these good doctors to take care of them, because I have to stay a long ways away from providing any medical advice to people.
Sure.
That practicing medicine without a license thing it's real, and they will hit you with it every chance they get, especially if you're doing unconventional, more naturopathic medicine. So
not their style of medicine.
Yes. Not just, hey, maybe you need to, up your Prozac dose a little bit better, and then you could be happy.
Exactly. We kind of got touched on before we went in live. We kind of talked about postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Maybe share some thoughts about that, because it's something that me and my wife went through a little bit. I didn't. My wife went through a little bit.
Well, you went through it too.
I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, it affects you too.
Sure.
Yeah, and the kids as well. So.
And I feel like it's becoming I don't know. I was going to say, it feels like it's becoming more and more prevalent, but maybe that's just because I'm aware of it now because my wife had it. I'm not sure.
Well, so that's one of the things they want to like beat into your brain. Well, the only reason you pay attention to it now is because it happened to you, like with autism. You know, for years they were saying, oh, there's not a big uptick in autism. You just had a sister who had an autistic kid. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's happening more often. So with postpartum, and this one just drove me up a wall. This hit home hard for me when I was just beginning my health journey, because we know that there are a lot of nutritional deficiencies that can cause depression, right? Like just Google search magnesium and depression. You know, there's a bunch of others that do the same. B vitamins is another big one. And mother gives about 80% of her stored nutrients to that child. And so once that child's born and all the feel-good endorphins and hormones, you know, leave mom's system, now she doesn't have the specific nutrients she needs to produce serotonin to feel balanced and produce other brain chemicals as well. So for me, it was always like, when it was so quick to throw these mothers just on an SSRI, and I'm sitting there going, well, did you check the tryptophan levels? Does she have any tryptophan so she can even attempt to make serotonin? You know, does she have these vital vitamins and amino acids and minerals that she needs to feel balanced and happy? No, they just, here's an SSRI, hopefully it gets better, good luck. And just a huge pet peeve of mine. So, you know, they give women prenatals, right? Which they're usually in tablet form, which we don't break down very well. They usually use like forms of vitamins and minerals that we don't absorb very well. And so it's like, why are we not getting women on these nutritional IVs where they're pregnant?
So it's easier to...
It's right in the bloodstream. Yeah. She doesn't have to break it down, nothing. It's just going to go hopefully where it needs to go. And so once that baby comes out and, you know, that feel-good hormone wears off on her, that her body can go back to making these feel-good chemicals by itself. And it just never happens. I mean, it should be tried, in my opinion, before any SSRI is given, unless she's, you know, at the point where there needs to be a medical intervention. But, you know, leading up to that, why are we not just, because the baby's outcomes are a lot better. The higher levels you have of these different nutrients, the kids always do better. You know, you're seeing cleft palate on kids more now than you ever did before. Generally, that's just mother's got a big zinc deficiency. So if she has one child where there is a cleft palate, you know, odds are that she's going to have another pretty high. So why isn't mom just being, you know, having zinc run into her veins? There's probably a deficiency there. If her body doesn't need the zinc, she'll just get rid of it naturally and there's no problem. So it's like medicine is never proactive anymore. It's always, oh man, how did that happen? Okay, here's a quick fix for it, which again, sometimes they're needed in acute situations. But why are we not doing more proactive things to head these things off before they happen? Because we have the science. We have the know-how. We have the different ways of administering these types of goodies to people. So why aren't we doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of it's, I assume, because no one knows that's even available.
Right.
You're just being told, take 2 of these at night. Right.
Yeah.
I guess people would have to just look into this. Like, how would anyone even know that this is possible? Just the everyday person.
Yeah. Well, when you're dying, like I was, you go down some pretty deep rabbit holes and you start uncovering more and more. And it seems like the more that I uncover and understand, the less I truly know about how this physiological masterpiece of our bodies and our mind work. It's so unbelievably complex, but there's those universal things that are true for everybody, right? So back to the SSRI. This was what I was going to tell you earlier. So it stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitors. So how serotonin normally works, we have these synapses in our brain, which are serotonin little cups, right? They're shaped like a cup. And normally serotonin gets dropped in and sits in that little cup for a short amount of time. And then the body expels the serotonin because it doesn't want to damage these little cups that they sit in, right? Well, they told us from the beginning that SSRIs just held the serotonin in these little synapses longer, and that's why they were working. Well, now that we have the ability through functional MRI and some of these other new technologies to see what's really going on in the brain, it's just not making those synapses hold the serotonin longer. It literally makes those little synapses die, and we grow a completely different synapses for the serotonin to sit in that's being generated by the SSRI. That's probably the reason why when people get off of SSRIs, they just can't feel balanced anymore, because they don't have the natural serotonin synapses for that serotonin to sit in anymore. You have to have that serotonin being produced by these drugs at this point.
So, I mean, once you get to that point, is there any going back?
I don't know. There's this is a new concept and a new idea. It came out probably 3 years ago, and I'm sure there's follow-up studies to it, but it was, when you see people go through these horrible withdrawals, you knew there was something more than other than it's just holding the serotonin in there longer. I knew it was a lie. And now with these studies that have been done, yeah.
Okay, so going back to kind of what brought that up earlier was I've had chronic back issues for a while. My 3 lower discs are all but gone. Mm-hmm. My 2 are gone. My 3rd one, and this was years ago when last time we had them imaged. And so we were looking into different things, and I got prescribed this pill that helps with pain and back pain. And actually my shoulders are messed up too from throwing mail and holding mail at the post office. And so it's helped that as well.
Right.
And I found like I'd went off of it for a day or two. I think I'd ran out and I've been on these for years. Mm-hmm. And I started just get these weird, like I was losing my balance. Like if I turned my head too fast, I couldn't track what was going on. Mm-hmm. Like just weird feelings. And I've never like done drugs. I've never drank. Cause I don't like not being in control.
Right.
And so it like frustrates me when whatever this was, when I not had these pills that I was taking. And, so I talked to my wife about it, who has a medical background, and she was like, well, it's also an antidepressant. And I was like, what? And people that have, rode along with me through our 119 episodes, they know the history on me and my dad and everyone else. And so I was kind of like, well, I got to get off of these. And there was one time I tried, and my wife told me, she's like, you just can't go cold turkey.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, like I've got, my willpower is pretty high. If I'm focused, I can get through it. Man, like day 2, I was like, wasn't even functioning. Right. And so I went back on. I will say, from running multiple businesses every day, having multiple employees, doing multiple different businesses at different things, and being able to switch my brain from one thing to another, and being able to handle the stress and the tolerance levels of all of that being higher, I think I've benefited from some of that.
Right. Yeah.
And so I don't know that I would have been able to accomplish everything I've been doing, because I'm still hitting that level of like mental breakdown every now and then.
Yeah.
But I think it's pushed higher because of this.
Yeah. The threshold gets a little higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you can get superficial doses of serotonin in your system, you can put up with a lot more crap.
Yeah.
Because that's our balanced, everyth's going to be okay. Let's just,
like that's your flat line at that point again.
Serotonin is a wonderful brain chemical.
So that little bit of back history on me, what do you do now?
Jump into the literature. If your wife's got a medical background, have her start just reading studies on these things and see what there is out there to combat that. If there's anything yet, I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't read a lot about it lately.
There's a lot of people I know that are on these for depression or not, right?
Right.
And I mean, it's terrifying to me to think that. So when I was younger, when I was like 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, my mom would be better on my age, but I had acid reflux disease. And I was in and out of hospitals all the time, getting scopes down my throat, everything. And I kind of just learned what foods set it off.
Yeah, I was just going to say food allergies are usually like if I have an intolerance to gluten, if I eat any, I immediately get acid reflux.
Yeah.
And that's how I know if I've got cross-contamination when I went out to eat or whatever, I immediately get acid reflux. Again, another thing where, should we run a food intolerance test on this individual and a food allergy test? It could probably eliminate a lot of people taking antacids because the links between antacids and certain cancers is absolutely undeniable.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like 13, I had cinder blocks under the head of my bed because when I would lay flat at night, I would get acid reflux all night, and I would wake up like coughing up acid.
Oh, dude.
And so when we put those cinder blocks under the head of my bed and like
to make you sit up like you're 85 years old and
and so I would slowly like slide down my bed all night, but I didn't have acid anymore.
Right.
And
it worked, right?
Yeah. And so like, but back then I was told like, hey, just take these pills every night. You're going to be good to go. And I don't know what it was about me as a kid, but I did not like, I would take liquid medicine, but like pills.
Oh yeah.
I just wouldn't do it.
I couldn't swallow pills either till I was like 19 years old.
Okay.
I don't know what it was,
Same,
dude. I had this aversion to it where I actually had to get hypnotized before I could do it. Yeah. And it's crazy because my mom is the oldest child on both sides of her family. She had that exact same problem. I was the oldest child on both sides. Me too. And my daughter, she was the oldest child on both sides. I had to get her hypnotized too before she could swallow even the tiniest little pill. Because I'd feel like I was going to choke on it. So I wonder if there was a generational trauma somewhere in our family history where somebody choked or whatever. But yeah, it's crazy.
Well, like my mom would chase me around the house, like literally run after me around the house.
Yeah. My grandma she'd hold my mouth open and just try to stick it in there with those long fingernails and just swallow it. And I would just be in this fight or flight, just trying to get away.
Because that's always helpful.
I know, right?
Yeah. That solves the problem.
Yeah, you have a fear of choking. Let me put my 2 fingers all the way down into your stomach and drop this pill off. That's going to work, right?
That's not going to create a fear at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I for me, even to today, like when people put the pill in their mouth first and then drink water, dude, I just can't even do it.
Yeah, my daughter has to do the opposite.
Water first.
Yeah, my daughter has to put, whatever the liquid is, and then throw the pill in and swallow. Yeah.
I mean, and I take it. So now I take a pill every night.
Yeah.
So what I was getting at was back then they told me like you're going to take one of these every day for the rest of your life, and I was like,
was it omeprazole? Do you remember?
No, but I do take that now every now and then to try and keep it under control. But I don't know. Like I'd been a couple of weeks taking them, and I remember just telling my mom, like, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'll just suffer,
right?
And we kind of learned like pasta did it to me.
The glutens,
red sauce, pizza, anything like that would do it. Yeah. And there was a couple other things, and I just wouldn't eat that late at night, and I was fine. And I've been like that the rest of my life, up to now. And so the thought now that I'm going to take this pill for the rest of my life, like almost like it makes me mad.
Yeah. We'll Google search omeprazole and cancer and watch the studies just.
Really?
Yeah. Because what happens is when you lower your stomach acid in any way, shape, or form, every time you eat, the food isn't being broken down in a very efficient manner. And so sometimes the food starts to ferment in the gut, and this kicks off a whole, fight or flight type thing in your system. And all the different cancers that are linked to omeprazole, people, before they put people on it, they should be honest with them about it and XYZ. So again,
I mean, that's like an over-the-counter thing.
It is now.
Off the shelf.
Yeah, it is now. It used to didn't be, but it's a protein pump inhibitor. So
like I grew up on like Pepto-Bismol. Like, I mean, I'd just take it every night. Right. When I was a kid. Yeah. I mean, we still have bottles of it now.
Yeah. So Pepto-Bismol is just, the main ingredient in it is bismuth, which is just a mineral. And they made it taste better and put some stuff in it. But yeah, it's just a mineral that helps out with that. And that's not that bad of stuff, but something that is shutting down your body's ability to produce adequate stomach acid can be helpful in acute situations. But again, if you ran what we call an IgG food intolerance test and also an IgE food allergy test, both of them are just blood draws, it would be really interesting to see what came back positive. And if there are positives on there and you stop doing them, stop eating them, it'd be pretty cool to see if you needed to take antacids anymore.
So where does that stuff come from? Is that just hereditary through where you're, where they, like if they grew up next to the ocean, seafood's okay. If you grew up in the mountain, like where does all that come from?
So, mine, it was actually my gluten intolerance that was causing my fibromyalgia. So I figured that out on my own. I quit eating gluten for a week, and then that crushing pain that I was in all the time just disappeared. And I used to think it was the genetically modified wheat that we have here. And this is another big thing, and sorry to go on another rant here. Most people think genetically modified means like hybridization, right? Where if you have an orchard of peaches and apples close enough to each other, they will start mixing their DNAs together to create these hybrid fruits.
Uh-huh.
No, genetically modified means they're taking gene sequences out of other living organisms and putting them into the wheat. And the one they use for American wheat is they take a gene sequence out of I think it's a bacteria that naturally produces its own pesticides. Might be a fungus. And they put that inside of the wheat's genome to allow it to produce its own protection systems.
Yeah.
And then through that, they were able to drench it in Roundup with the main ingredient glyphosate. I don't know how many times they apply it throughout the grow season, but when they cut it, they just completely cover it all in Roundup and glyphosate because it helps it dry up quicker. So it'd be interesting to know now, is it really the genetically modified wheat that's my problem? Or is it my body responding to glyphosate, which is a carcinogen? I mean, it's a monster of a chemical. I think that's why my body says, we can't have this anymore, throws the inflammation through the roof and makes me not feel good when I eat it.
So it's not even the food, it's the pesticide they're putting on it.
I think it's the pesticide.
Or it could be.
Yeah.
That's the thought.
Well, when I go to South Africa every year, we go hunting there every year. And when I go to Mexico, different places, I can eat the wheat down there and not have that problem because a lot of countries will not allow American wheat anymore into their countries.
There's probably a lot of that going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the same guy I sent you earlier, Gary Brecka, he has a clip, I think, on the Bradley's podcast, and he's talking about strawberries, and you can put them in a hydraulic press, and there's enough pesticides to when they're done being, smashed, you can respray an entire crop. Like, that's how
I believe it, yeah.
I'm like, that's horrifying. I don't. So we don't eat strawberries anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it's like even if you're getting the most organic foods that you can buy, our soils are so barren of the nutrients as they once had. There's a famous Stanford study where in the 40s they took broccoli to see how many sticks they needed to eat to get the recommended daily allowance of magnesium through the broccoli. And back then it was 3 sticks of broccoli to get that 400 milligrams. Well, a few years ago, they went and did a similar type study. They went to the best organic farms in California, took their broccoli, and the best source they found, you now need to eat 13 sticks of broccoli to get that same amount of magnesium.
And that's because the soil is depleted?
Yeah. I mean, you think about, how did snow runoff used to work back in the day before we created all these dams and all these cement ditches and everything like that? You get all that snow up on top of that mountain, and then when it would melt, it would run off the mountains down into the lowlands through all the dirt. And what's in the dirt? Tons and tons of minerals. And then when we'd eat the beef, they come over and graze on whatever's growing in these pastures, highly loaded with nutrients. And now we don't have that benefit anymore. Even our best organic foods are really starved for nutrients. So that's why I just tell people you have to supplement anymore. Because I get people in all the time that, I'm a vegan, totally organic, and you look at their blood under a microscope and go, you are completely anemic. And they'll go, okay, well, I'm going to take an iron supplement. It's like, well, that could help. But we just absorb, iron's one particular nutrient that we just absorb so much better from animal sources than we can get from greens. So it's just
more being vegan.
Well, yeah. I mean, people can be vegan.
Well, I mean, like in that instance, the best way to get it would be eating meat.
Yeah. Well, they make this product that's beef liver capsules. So they grind up beef liver, because I don't know if you've ever tried beef liver, but it is the most god awful tasting thing I've ever eaten, even though I know how healthy it is. So these companies that do that, you basically put it in capsules. And then you're able to, boost up those certain nutrient levels without having to actually taste the meat or go through that whole ethical thing that some people deal with. So,
okay. I mean, I've never been vegan, but I can understand that, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not chewing it now, but it's still there.
Yeah, but most nutrients you can get from greens just as well as you can get from meat sources. But iron and B vitamins, completely different story. Everything else you can get adequate and sometimes even more from greens. But those building blocks for our cells in our body, mainly our red blood cells, are just so much, the potency is a lot higher through meat.
So as far as deficiencies, what are some of the main ones? What are ones you see a lot? What's something that, whether you've done testing or not, what's something that you should be supplementing?
So magnesium's kind of a big one. There's just, the reason being there's just no magnesium anymore really in anything that we eat. On top of,
but we're creating it. How are you getting the supplements then?
It's basically a mineral. It's a mineral. So it's a natural mineral that we have on this earth.
Okay. So they're getting it. It's just not naturally coming into the soil anymore.
Yeah. It's just coming the natural ways that we get it, either picking the plants down in these valleys, whatever, the fruits, veggies, or eating the meat that's actually grazing in those areas. So, we don't have enough in our diet. And then on the flip side, they put a lot of artificial calcium in a lot of things, right? And calcium and magnesium are what we call antagonists for each other. So the more calcium you take in, the lower magnesium goes, and vice versa. So not only are we being starved of magnesium through our diets, but we're also throwing those calcium levels a lot higher. So calcium goes up, magnesium goes down. Some of the main functions of magnesium, it's the calming mineral of our body. So I take it every night before I go to bed because it helps set the night rhythm for our bodies. Studies have been done that melatonin production goes up in environments where there's adequate magnesium. Also, another hormone that's produced by our pituitary glands called antidiuretic hormone, which tells our body to store all of our hydration in our cells so we don't have to get up, multiple times in the night to pee so we can stay in REM sleep, is not produced in high enough doses when we don't have magnesium.
Okay.
So not only is it calming us down, helping us sleep, but magnesium is absolutely necessary for proper muscle coordination and function. Calcium makes muscles get tight, and magnesium is what allows them to release. So our body, for instance, will let us know when we're low in magnesium. It starts with muscle twitches, so maybe a little twitch here, a little twitch there. And then if it's not addressed, then it goes into getting Charlie horses in the middle of the night, stuff like that. Those are all signs that the body needs more magnesium.
Okay, because I thought that was like being hydrated.
No. So potassium, if you're in the middle of a workout or you just got done, because potassium's needed to flux back through the calcium channels into the muscles. So if you get Charlie horses or muscle spazzing out during or right after a workout, then you think there's a potassium problem. But if you're just laying in bed at 2 a.m. and all of a sudden that calf muscle locks up and you're like, oh my dear God, I'm going to die, it's magnesium.
That's a magnesium issue.
That's a magnesium problem. And then you have to know what good forms of the minerals are out there.
So that was my next question. So where do you have a special or a certain place you go to find that stuff?
Yeah, so, and this is another pet peeve. People will read these things and they'll go to Walmart or Costco or whatever, and there's this bottle of magnesium that's like 4 pounds and it's like $19, but it's all magnesium oxide.
Okay.
Magnesium oxide, we can absorb about 2% of that. So you would have to take so much magnesium that would probably give you the worst diarrhea you've ever had in your life, and you'd probably die from it, just to get the daily RDA out of taking magnesium oxide.
Okay.
So you have to get chelated forms of magnesium, glycinate, taurate, threonate. There's a bunch of them out there. But see, and that's another thing. You have to learn, I need some magnesium. And then, okay.
Costco's got it for $19.
And it sucks because people that will resonate with them that it could be a magnesium deficiency. And so they've done all this homework. They go in and they buy this huge bottle of magnesium, and then they see no changes. And what do? They go, well, it must not be magnesium. But if they were taking an absorbable form, a bioavailable form of magnesium, it'd take a couple weeks and that stuff would go away.
So in your opinion, does calcium do anything? Do we need calcium?
You absolutely have to have calcium because there's a whole other network of problems that come from calcium deficiency.
So how do you keep that balance then if they're counteracting each other?
You can always look for the symptoms, but there's also blood tests where you can get it done. I mean, the blood testing for magnesium is still not where it should be. They're doing something called a red blood cell magnesium test now. It gives you a little bit better than the serum magnesium test, but still not a perfected science.
Okay. And then the one that I had brought up, I don't know how to say it. You're going to tell me how to say it.
L-theanine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second?
That's an amino acid, yeah. So again, it's just like all the other amino acids. And this brings up another interesting point of, they say all the time that people build up intolerance or they build up tolerance to these, like SSRIs, or if they're on, dopamine agonists like Adderall or whatever to feel happy and focus. And they say over time we just build up this tolerance. But take SSRIs, for instance. We have to have tryptophan, L-tryptophan, it's an amino acid, to be able to produce serotonin. So we take these pills that make us produce, these extra amounts of serotonin so we can feel balanced and calm. But if we're not taking in a massive load of L-tryptophan, which is the precursor to serotonin, then we have to take more SSRI and more, and we're just squeezing every last bit of tryptophan out of that body to produce more serotonin. So eventually it gets to a point where we have to take such a high amount of an SSRI to even fill it at all because all of our serotonin is now gone. Then they try to change you to a different type of drug that can try to extract it a different way. So for folks that rely on these drugs for daily life, there's a product out there called Craverest. It's a nutritional product, and it has all the precursors in really good form to allow your body to produce a lot of tryptophan and a lot of tyrosine, and those are the two amino acids that are needed for dopamine production and serotonin.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I know it's a lot of information. Yeah, it's a ton of information, but again, it's all this information is out there. So like, for instance, somebody that's suffering from ADHD, right? Maybe it's their body just isn't producing enough dopamine for them to focus because there's not enough of the amino acid L-tyrosine to make that happen. So when you go into a doctor's office and they just throw you, Ritalin or Adderall or whatever, where it's going to just squeeze every last bit of that you have out of it, why aren't we running a test to see how maybe there's low amino acid levels? Maybe you could just start taking not only tyrosine and the other precursors that are needed to turn that tyrosine into dopamine. Why aren't we trying that first? Why aren't we running those blood tests to see that, the precursors, you have to have vitamin B6 to produce dopamine. What if you're low on B6?
Right.
And you could just take a simple supplement to raise those levels up, and now your body can naturally produce the dopamine in healthy levels, then, rely on these amphetamines to get you there.
You had mentioned melatonin.
Melatonin, yeah.
It's a huge thing. Everyone talks about it. Mm-hmm. Sleeping, right? Do you have any thoughts on that? I didn't really prep you for this. Is there anything good or bad or anything on it?
Well, there is the idea out there that if you're taking it artificially for too long, that the pituitary gland, this little thing up here in the front of your brain, will stop producing it.
Okay.
And again, I don't believe that's the case. Okay. I think the precursors to melatonin are just not in the body. So again, if you're taking something that's going to make you produce more melatonin, or you're just taking melatonin in a supplement form, I think your body's going to get along just fine with that supplement form. But again, why aren't we taking those steps backwards and go, could this just be a simple nutritional deficiency why this person can't fall asleep at night on their own?
Yeah, most likely it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no nutrition hardly at all in food anymore. So where would we get it unless we're supplementing for that because we understand how that cycle works?
Okay, so if someone wants to know anything more about that for themselves, well, and I'll back up for me, I was going to mention this too. My wife went and had some blood work done to see if she had any deficiencies, and she's very healthy. Mm-hmm. Exercises almost every day. Like I said, just ran the St. George Marathon. But she went and pulled some blood work and she said, "Hey, do you want me to line some up for you too?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to go into the hospital and have blood work done because I don't want to be told I should have died 3 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. Or, hey, we see something here. We need to talk to you in our office about the potential of XYZ.
And so when you had brought up what you do, I'm like, I feel a lot more comfortable going in that route.
Right.
And have it all broken down. So I'm going to come and see you. I'm probably going to line up my wife too. Maybe my mom.
I would love to, especially where she's a medical practitioner. It'd be so fun to have her in there because what we do, we're there for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And it's more of just helping people understand these natural processes in their body. But when they already have a medical background, it's a lot easier for me because I'm not having to explain what red cells do and hemoglobin and all the different things that go on.
And I just look at her and I'm like, "Did you get all that?"
Yeah, she probably would get it. She definitely would get it.
Yeah, she understands that whole world. It's not my language. And I grew up, like I said, as a mom in healthcare, so I never even tried to learn the language.
Right.
I just looked at her, and then when I got married, we just kind of
transition
off to my wife.
There you go. Yeah, and people, the sad thing is people generally don't ever start looking into this until they've hit a point where they're staring down the barrel of a gun. And that's usually what happens to human beings. I wish we could be a little bit wiser and head these things off before we get to that point, and it'd be much easier to, climb back from them. But like me, it took years to get back to where I was feeling somewhat normal.
Yeah.
Because once you get to that point, man, there's so many things going wrong in the body that it is such a complex picture that, some people just don't do it.
Well, let me ask you this, and I didn't prep you on this either. So on a scale of 1 to 10 of pain, what are you feeling right now?
I don't feel pain anymore.
See, when people ask me that, I'm like, well, I'm like a 5 or a 6 all the time.
Yeah.
And they're like, you should be a 0.
Right.
And I'm like, I haven't been a 0 since as far back as I can remember.
Yeah. Well, as boys, one of the things that really messes the body up physiologically is concussions. And, I don't ever remember how many concussions I got for obvious reasons, but when I get around my friends from growing up, they'll be like, "Remember that time you were trying to get on the roof and that branch broke and you fell like 20 feet and you were out cold for what?" No, don't remember it. Sorry.
I remember the story.
Yeah. And then once the brain gets, because it's command central, once it gets damaged and neurons die, whatever neurons die, then whatever that pathway in the brain was supposed to do, whether it was inflammation control or whatever, it's now gone until you do things to repair that. So,
See, there's one time for sure I had a concussion that I can remember. And I mean, we were playing football, just like out the park with a bunch of dudes. And I dove to catch a ball and I didn't see the kid coming. We were crossing. And I dove, so I had left my feet, I had dove and I hit right in. And I probably had 40 pounds on him. Like I was a lot bigger than him. And I hit him and I don't remember really anything else except for like opening my eyes and everyone was like standing over me. And they're like, "Oh shit, dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, what happened?" And again, like I remember it because the story they told me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
I just remember like running for the ball and then waking up, right?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy looking back. So my friends, I grew up in a really small town, Fillmore, Utah, and specifically remembering a few of my friends getting these concussions while we were playing football and what the quality of their life looked like after that point. The 3 people that I think about a lot, only one of them's left alive.
Wow.
And the other 2, one was murdered and the other one committed suicide. And my one friend that committed suicide, he would just always talk about how he didn't feel normal anymore. He was like disassociation style stuff from his body. So he was there, but he wasn't there. And now with, all these studies being done by the NFL about CTE and stuff like that, you saw what happened to Aaron Hernandez and different things like that. The NFL did a study. It was something like 112 brains they pulled out of a brain bank of ex-NFL players because they wanted to see how prevalent CTE was in those brains that they had saved. I think there was 2 of those brains that didn't have active CTE. every other one of them was there.
Jeez.
So, yeah, it makes it really, really hard for your body to ever get back to homeostasis, because those pathways, those neurons that you need for the body to be able to maintain or control whatever that function is, once the lights go out on that, then, they used to tell us, you've only got so many brain cells, and once they're dead, they're gone. And we know that's not true. One of the biggest things we use now is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We can regrow new neurons in damaged parts of the brain. And but yeah, that's just another thing that people just take for granted. But once you have a concussion, man, it can send people into tailspins. So, and growing up as a boy, like, I did and you did, dude, you were always just doing stupid shit. Like, at least I was.
We were too. I mean, sports were our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I had 3 older brothers, and that's all we did was sports.
Yeah, it's like every time it'd snow, okay, well, let's see how long of a rope we can get and hook it behind a truck.
Yeah.
And go out in this field and put somebody on an inner tube where they would turn, and the whiplash factor, you're like 6 feet off the ground, and then you hit a fence post, and you're like, oh, God, he's not awake. What's going on? You're like, dude.
Everyone's telling him the story.
Yeah,
for the rest of his
everybody's
life.
reminding him of that one time that they're laughing about still, and you're just like, oh, dude.
You're like, I'm sure you're right. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'll take your word on it, because I do not remember an ounce of that day. So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, so there's so much of that.
Anything else? Anything else you want to? I think we covered quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah. So one thing about the discs in your back,
okay,
and something for your wife to Google search. Have her look up herniated or deteriorating discs and a microbe called staph epi. There was an osteopathic doctor who, instead of just, removing discs and doing all that stuff when they get inflamed, he started doing biopsies of them. And it was something like 40% of his patients, he found this bacteria that normally lives on our skin called staph epi, was somehow getting through the dermis and was infecting these discs. And when they treated them for staph epi with intravenous antibiotics, a lot of them got better.
Really?
So
yeah, I'll have to look into that for sure.
Just something to look into. It might not have anything to do with it, but if it did, you could stop the deterioration with some good old-fashioned antibiotics. So.
I mean, the thing that sucks about all that the most is, like, I was extremely active. Like, best shape of my life when I met my wife. I was playing basketball, football 3-4 nights a week. Softball. I was on a couple different softball teams.
Yep.
I mean, I was 6'1", 210, run forever.
Yeah,
just fit, extremely athletic.
Yeah.
I mean, I was athletic my whole life, but like that was like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And then got married, started working more, got on with the post office.
Eating the junk food, not sleeping,
and then
not
that's where my whole thing just changed, man.
Yeah.
And like, I don't say got married to put any blame on that, but it's like then it was like I had one place to eat on my whole route, and so I ate there almost every day, and it was like burgers and fries.
Yeah.
And then 30 pounds, and 3 years later, my back was jacked.
Yeah.
And
it's a thing, man. And when I was in the fuel industry, I would go from one gas station to the other, and really, really long days. So it'd be like, if you didn't get up and, meal prep, you'd just get nachos really quick. She had to run somewhere else or whatever. And
Bahama Mamas.
There you go. And that was part of the reason why I got so sick. I was just so nutrient depleted from burning my candle at both ends.
I mean, that's me right now. Like you had said, I think that conversations happen at certain times for a reason, and I think this is one of them for me for sure.
Absolutely.
Anyway, but dude, I appreciate you coming.
Thanks, man.
I'm glad that we had this talk. I'm glad I was able to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
The hyperbaric stuff interests me, but it's the Arizona.
Yeah.
I wrote it down here. Internal nutrition.
Internal nutrition.
Internal nutrition that really just spiked me, because I've been on this kick for a few weeks now.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting, especially with bringing your wife down, because she's got a background in it, and it's really interesting to see medical professionals look at what is actually going on in the blood in a way that they never do.
Well, and her mom's more, like you met Emmanuel, right?
Yeah.
So her mom's more on that road, right? Like she practiced Reiki, she did that. She's
Which is very important. I mean, it's a pillar of healing, that emotional side.
Sure.
Yeah, it is huge.
But so I guess I bring that up because like my wife's extremely open to everything.
Perfect.
Right? Like she's not, I wouldn't bring her if I thought she was going to poo-poo on the whole thing. But
no, I'd want you to bring her anyways, because that's some of the funnest times we have, because it's amazing how I learn so much from the people that come in. I view everybody that comes through that door as somebody that's going to teach me something, because they're always, I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but the position I'm in when they're in there, they're a lot of the times afraid to bring up stuff, because they always start, when they start sharing the really important information that's going to really help put this puzzle together, they always say the same thing. You know, this is going to sound really dumb. And I immediately turn and go, continue.
You're like, okay, pick up your pad and paper.
There's always gold in all that, because that little voice inside of them, whether you want to call it, you know, Holy Ghost, your soul, your spirit, whatever, it always knows what's going on. But we've been taught through generations of programming to silence this and focus on this. And this runs on just chaos and anarchy.
Your brain, yeah.
Your brain does. It's just trying to keep you, whatever it realizes is the subconscious, trying to keep you safe. And what safe means to that is doing the exact same things we've always done, because it knows that we're still alive.
Yep.
So even if something is amazing and is going to do you so much good, there's that subconscious mind going, well, you know, if you do this, it could have this negative impact. But your spark, your soul is screaming, do that. That's exactly, you know, Jordan Peterson. Is it Jordan Peterson that has this line? I think it is Jordan Peterson. He says, the magic that you are searching for in life is exactly in the place that you're afraid to look. And I blame that on the subconscious.
Yeah.
Because this is telling us what we need to do and where we need to go. And this is giving us 1,000 reasons why that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's the unknown.
Yeah.
We know
it could be. You know, you might walk in there and they might laugh at you for saying that, or da-da-da, think you're stupid, whatever. But in that dark place that you're afraid to go is where the magic is to set you free. So it's kind of catch-22.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Episode 119.
There we go.
That's all you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming in. Really do appreciate you. I'm going to sign up for all this stuff because I'm so curious about it.
Let's do it. I would love to do it.
Okay. All right, guys, that's episode 119. Ryan Brinkerhoff, please like, share, comment. If you want to follow Ryan, you can follow him at
InsideOut Hyperbarics on all the social media stuff. So that's what we go under.
Okay. And if you want to find out where that is, it's over by
Coral Desert Health Center. So right at the base of Four Master, big medical building.
Yeah, can't really miss it.
No, it's hard to miss.
All right. Episode 119. Talk to you guys next week.